Welcome to the Wellness Revolution podcast, the radio show all about wellness in your mind, body, spirit, personal growth, sex, and relationships. Stay tuned for weekly interviews featuring guests that have achieved physical, mental, and spiritual health in their lives. If you'd like to have access to our entire back catalog, visit drveronica.com for instant access. And here is your host, Dr. Veronica.
Again to another episode of Dr. Veronica's Wellness Revolution. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of woo-woo. So, you know us doctors that we don't always get our information through case control, double-blind, retrospective, blah, 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 blah studies. Sometimes we get it from using our gut, our intuition. And I realize that when I look back on it, the reason I did well in medical school was not just because I was smart and I knew how to take the test. Now, I knew how to do that. I was academically very solid. But being academically solid and taking the test doesn't make you a good clinician. So I'd see people who they could answer all the questions, but they couldn't get the right answer on the patient that was sitting in front of them. Yet for me, it just came so easily and naturally. It was like cake. I thought, at that point, medical school was easy. Now, most people would not describe medical training as easy. However, I would go into a rounds. They would be questioning the medical students. They would get to my turn, and they always want to stump us because they're trying to teach us and break us down. That's what medicine is like. They want to break you down. And I remember a point in time where I'm doing internal medicine rotation, and it's my turn. They get to me with a question. It was a complicated patient, of course. And I kept answering the questions and correctly. And so what ended up happening was that doctor, who was a real tough ass guy, and I can say that because here we are on the podcast, tough ass guy, couldn't stump me. His face started to change because he realized that I knew what I was talking about. So I could support it with the academic, but how was I getting those answers so easily as a third-year medical student who was just starting a clinical rotation? I realized, looking back now, I was tapping into people intuitively. And so there are people that I never meet them at all. And I know a few pieces of information about them, their name. I might even know their relative and not even know their name. And I can tap into them energetically and tell what's going on with them very accurately, like 100% accurately. And I never met the person. So that's intuitive skills. That's being able to read energy. So that doesn't negate anything that's going on the academic side. That doesn't negate case control, double-blind studies. When you get this intuitive information, what's beautiful about being a traditionally trained doctor is then I can support it with tests and data and everything else. I get the answer, and then I go about supporting it so that the patient will believe me, the doctors and everybody else will believe me, but I know that I'm right already in what I'm telling you. And a lot of the information that we get is just no one could get from a textbook. And so I'm so happy today that I have a soul sister with me. And we're all over the world, but she's a soul sister and a functional medicine trained doctor, an Ayurvedic medicine trained doctor, and also into mystic medicine. So I'm going to welcome this lady to you. She's absolutely wonderful. You're going to love her. Vibrant personality, but besides knowing her medical stuff just down, she also knows that other side, the energetic side. And that's the side that heals people. So Dr. Keesha, welcome to Dr. Veronica's Wellness Revolution.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
So what I want to know first is just give us a little bit about your pathway, your background. I like people to tell their own story, like how they started, what first made you be a doctor.
So I started out as a nurse. And so my progression through this has been a little bit different than yours. I got sick when I was 30. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And that's an autoimmune disease, right? So as I started going to a rheumatologist to find out what was wrong with me and why my joints were inflamed, I was a marathon runner and I wasn't able to run anymore. And all these things were happening. My body was just breaking down. Well, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So what was I given? Methotrexate and a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So something for cancer and something that will break down your gut faster than you can say break down your gut. So I went home, I looked up the side effect profile of these drugs and I said, oh my gosh, I know my grandfather had rheumatoid arthritis. And so my rheumatologist had kind of shrugged when they said, why do I have this? And she said, it's genetic. You said your grandfather had it. So what she's saying is this is typed in stone. You have this. There's nothing you can do. No, diet has nothing to do with it, let alone what maybe your spiritual path is, or what the universe is trying to teach you, or what your thoughts have to do with it, right? So we're way out there now when we're talking about that. So I started Googling, but it wasn't Google in those days. It was Ask Jeeves, because this was over 20 years ago. Yeah. As I started asking Jeeves, so what are some alternative remedies for rheumatoid arthritis? So in those days, I was strictly Western medicine. I was on the balloon pump team. I did thoracic medicine. I was ICU. I just loved that high adrenaline junkie stuff. So when I found an article that yoga was really great for autoimmune disease, then I started practicing yoga. I had a yoga teacher mention the word Ayurveda. Ayurvedic medicine, of course, being the sister science, the medical arm of yoga. It's 10,000 years old. And when I started reading about it, again with Ask Jeeves, I found that Ayurveda knew all those thousands of years ago that we're not all the same person. So now this sounds really silly, but that was revolutionary to me. That, you don't match the drug to the symptom, right? That thing that we do in Western medicine is actually, there's another way of doing it. And so then I started finding out that, I have this individual body type, the way I think, my thoughts, my past had a lot to do with what was happening in my present. So I learned to meditate. One day I learned in meditation, look at the word autoimmune, and auto meant I was attacking me. I started thinking, why would I be killing myself? Why was I trying to commit suicide in a societally acceptable way? Which is exactly what I decided autoimmunity was. And so in that meditation, I went back in time and started searching through, like, when's the first time that I told my cells I don't want to be alive? And it was when I was 10 years old and I was being sexually abused in my elementary school. And I thought, in that time period at the age of 10, your brain's not fully developed till you're 26. So I'm in school being called to the principal's office, right? And I'm saying to myself, I must be really bad. I must, so I have to be perfect so I don't get called into the principal's office. And so a 10-year-old can't figure out what's going on. Like, this is so not in the Rolodex of conversation or experience for me. We were raised with no television. I didn't even know what any of this could possibly mean, except that there was something wrong with me, that I deserved this. I tried to tell my parents, I tried to tell the teachers, but it was in this conversational way, that vocabulary that didn't make any sense to them, right? Because I'm trying to find out if I'm the one that's responsible and if I've done something really, really, really bad, right? So I went back in time to this time when I thought the world's not safe. I don't understand it. I just want out, right? This is not a safe place for kids. So my cells agreed with me and said, okay. And so at 30, when I was sitting there in meditation, I went, and so here I was in the present day with 4 kids, great life that I loved, and I had rheumatoid arthritis. So I realized that my past had caught up with me, right? And that time actually wasn't quite as linear as we thought. And I really got this whole download of what we call quantum physics today, and everything kind of collapsed. And I got that I had agreed to this when I came into the planet, that my whole thing I came here to do was to forgive, and that I had to go through the things that I went through, and as far as trauma or whatever you want to call it, that these were my life experiences that set me up to learn what I had to learn. So I learned this really amazing forgiveness process right in my meditation as a download, and went through it. And I came back a completely different person. And within 6 months, my rheumatoid arthritis was gone. So, for me, that's what I call mystic medicine, is really saying the things that are the challenges that we meet in our lives are things that we actually are meant to have happen. I call it the spiritual gymnasium. You were saying you get up early in the morning and go to the gym, and I get up early in the morning and I exercise and I meditate. But the spiritual gymnasium is the challenge part of our life, the part that we think is bad, and we call things good and we call things bad, and we're always in this state of judgment about whether or not it's good or bad, right? And if we move out of that state of judgment, then we know that all of it's flow. All of it is meant to help us be the best, highest, brightest light that we can possibly be. And so that's where I am today. So I went back to school, and that's when I started into this training of getting down to root cause and really learning about things. And I was the same way in school. I could intuitively grok everything just instantly, and I had to kind of keep to myself the way it was happening too, because you're like, well, how do you already know that, and for a long time, I used to say, well, I'm just sort of weird that way, Now I just say, no, everybody can do that. It's just like, same thing, gymnasium. If you work that muscle out, then you're going to have it be really strong, and everybody has that ability. But I actually believe that people that have trauma have a higher propensity for it, because you had to have your radar on at such a high frequency as a kid to stay safe and to survive, that you're used to reading people and you're used to picking up what their motives are. And that, that whole process, I believe, gets developed at a very early age. And so it's one of the gifts of trauma, and so again, not good, not bad. It just is what it is. And it's here to help you to become who you were supposed to be in this lifetime. So.
Yes. So a little bit more about, you said you healed yourself from doing a meditation. And yes, however, we're a whole person. We're mind, body, spirit. So usually there's something else going on besides that. Just you got a spiritual download and voila. It took you about 6 months. But what else did you do? So the spiritual was first. You first had to realize that this is a problem within my spirit, within my emotions, and I have to deal with that. So illnesses and injuries that we all will have are our biggest challenge to evolve spiritually. So you figured that out, and then you were able to go on the path. So yes, if you don't do that, we understand you will just get sick in another area. Something else will happen if you don't deal with the spirit.
So Ayurvedic medicine talks about, we have 5 different layers. Okay. We're not just our physical body. We have the next layer of us would be what Chinese medicine calls your chi. Yoga calls your prana, right? We call it your electromagnetic energy field in Western science. So it's that next energy body, that part that we can pick up with Kirlian photography now. We know it exists. There's no doubt. Then there are these other 3 layers. So there goes physical, your energetic body, and then you have an emotional body, a mental body, and you have that place that you connect to the divine with. That's called your bliss sheath. And it's called Anandamaya Kosha in Sanskrit for the Ayurvedic people out there. That sheath, or that part of you, that layer, is where you connect to spirit. So if you're toxic in your physical or your emotional or your mental layers, you don't have ready access to that portal. And so toxicity is going to happen as a result of your thoughts, your beliefs, the way you talk to yourself, but also what you're eating, what you're drinking, and what you're exposed to in this planet, right? So health is a combination of your genetics plus your exposure to toxins, and toxins are not just physical, it's also your thoughts. And then how your ability to detox those things, right? And then that's your individual unique health equation. So for me, I had the genetics. I already had rheumatoid arthritis. I also have breast cancer in my family, and I've had breast cancer too.
Wow.
So, those genetics, I was a photographer, and I used to play in the darkroom constantly without gloves with my chemicals, right? I was raised on Navy military bases, and so there's it's just tons of toxins that I was exposed to. But then I also had this belief about myself that I had to be perfect to even be worthy of survival. So that's another toxin. So when I learned how to detox those, I knew I had to in that meditation. Then I got up and I started getting to work. And that's the thing that I think people get kind of messed up with when it comes to spiritual work is they say, well, if I just sit on my meditation cushion or in prayer on my knees or on my yoga mat or whatever, right? And I just wish it hard enough or I pray for it hard enough, it'll just happen. But actually, you have to take those steps forward to do it. So I learned that I was really allergic to gluten and dairy. And after my big long runs, I would come home and I would eat Greek yogurt with granola and blueberries and walnuts, thinking I was doing the most amazing thing for myself. I was bloated within I don't know, it'd be sometimes 3 to 30 minutes. I'd have to undo the top, button of my jeans. I thought everybody had to do that. I thought everybody bloated after they ate. That's how out to lunch I was in those days. So learning all this, made me realize that, digestion is super important. In fact, it's the root of all health. How you digest your thoughts, how you digest your food makes the next layer of who you are. So I had to learn all this. So I changed my diet for sure. I took supplements. I learned how to detox. I did all the things that we teach in functional medicine, but I also took it to that other level of really taking responsibility for my life, not being in a victim mode, not blaming anyone for anything. And that was really important. Forgiveness was a huge piece of my own reversal of that autoimmune disease. But today, I still don't eat sugar. I still don't drink alcohol. I don't drink caffeine. I don't eat gluten, and I don't eat dairy. These are things I learned about myself 20 years ago, that if I did those, I would have inflammation. So I stay really clean with my diet.
Yeah, you stay real. It's interesting that you mentioned about the running, and I went home and you did what was the conventional wisdom, and I was running marathons and things like that. And I realized they would talk about carbo loading and having these pasta dinners, and I realized that makes me feel horrible.
Yes, I would pasta dinner load before my marathons, and then I would be so bloated. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So for some reason, I realized, no, that's not. I can't do what they're telling me to do. I have to do something completely different, or I'm not going to get through. And then later on, because I wasn't heavy wheat eater or anything like that, I found out you're sensitive to this. And this is why you had a problem where you would have stomach aches when you were a kid and you had oatmeal for breakfast, so you stopped eating breakfast. And when they told you load up on the carbs, you couldn't load up on the carbs because it made you feel awful. And so I fell out of it. But what made it really challenging was figuring out that it was there when you weren't eating a lot of it in the first place, and it was a problem. I get muscle aches and joint aches. I can eat it some, but if I eat too much, I don't get digestive upset. That means I've just went crazy.
Yeah.
I'm getting muscle aches and pains.
Yeah, I just don't even eat it anymore because of that. I don't want the feedback from my body saying, yo, stop, so I just don't do it anymore.
Yes.
So, and I was a complete sugar addict. That's one of the reasons I ran, because it's how I controlled my weight. I just beat my body, and I didn't even know it. I thought I was being so healthy. It's just funny.
Talk about that. You said I was a complete sugar addict. What did that look like? Because people think, I can stop, or I notice with my clients, especially ones who are diabetic, they'll switch from Snickers to really high fructose fruit and mess them up.
Banana. Yeah, which could be a bar, right, for your pancreas, right?
Yes. So explain that.
So that's exactly, what goes back to, again, my 10-year-old experience of coming home from school and, just kind of like, oh, that was a terrible day again. And having this beautiful homemade dessert sitting on the countertop that my mom had made. So my mom was an amazing cook and a great baker, and she would always have something cooling on the counter when we got home.
It sounds so good.
Yeah, I know. And that was my after school snack. And I would eat that and then settle into, okay, I'm home, and do my homework and everything. And so that carried forward as the comfort food. And I also am a great baker and a great cook, and, not anymore. I eat very simply, but I would make homemade treats for my kids too. And so I would run, because as I got older, that caught up with me. fact, in college, when school got hard, I would bake a pan of brownies, and sit there and study and eat them. And so to me, that was kind of like those things went together. My brain worked better if I sat down to do my homework, if I had some homemade little treat with me. Well, your body doesn't love that forever. And so I started running because I was gaining the freshman 15. And that's when I started running. I wasn't a runner in high school. So I started learning how to control my weight that way. And I didn't even realize it had anything to do with my study habits of sitting down with something with sugar in it. So as time went on, I realized that I was baking something, for the family dessert for dinner, when in fact I might be having an emotionally hard day. And that was actually just my way of self-medicating, right? And, we have stories in my family of my grandmother's shivering in Wyoming or Colorado. She lived in both places, which are very cold in the wintertime, on the radiator next to the wall, eating a bowl of ice cream with our famous Ewers hot fudge, right? So it goes back generations in time in my family. We're all chocoholics. So one of the things that I had to do was do kind of a ritual and a ceremony. It's called Tarpana in Ayurvedic medicine, where you let go of things in your ancestral lineage that don't serve you and have gratitude and appreciation for all the things that they have, your family has brought for you. And I put a Hershey's chocolate bar, I broke it up and put it into the river and let it go. And, said, okay, that's no longer what I'm doing now for my being able to concentrate, which was very challenging when I was in my doctoral program and sitting down to do a dissertation. Like, okay, what am I going to do to concentrate, So you have to learn new habits. But that was a big one for me, is the sugar thing. And it turns out that I really, when, now we do genetic testing, and I love this time of being in medicine because I love using that,
Yes.
And I have genes that don't support really good dopamine production. And so people that are addicts like that, they often have these mutations in their genetics. And as I said, it goes back generations in my family. So we've all figured out ways to make sure that we can focus and concentrate and have good motivation in our lives through using some sort of addiction.
Yes. So I'm going to switch over a little bit to a very sensitive subject, but you put it out there and share it with us so freely. A lot of people have been through sexual abuse, and a lot of people have that in their lineage, sexual abuse going through their families. And so I don't know if that's something that has been within your family. And so you realize that this energy was in me, and so therefore it happened to me. I've seen this in family lines.
Right.
It seems to be passed on. There's a conspiracy of silence around it. The person who's abused is not supposed to say anything. The person who is the abuser is protected, and thus it keeps going on. The energy keeps traveling from generation to generation to generation.
So it's 1 in 4 girls that we know about.
1 in 4?
1 in 4. 1 in 4 girls, right? And boys also, get sexually abused. And I was, you could say, from the pattern that you're talking about, which is very common, you could say I was lucky because it didn't come from my family, and I don't have a generational thing with it. It happened with a vice principal in my elementary school. And so that's what I mean by it was such a screwing with your mind as a little kid, getting called into the principal's office like you're in trouble, right? So that's what it was for me. And it wasn't family at all. But 2 of my sons, that's why I got breast cancer. So several years later, after my rheumatoid arthritis, I healed that. It had been many, many, many years. And my grown 18-year-old son came to me and said that he had had some sexual abuse from a babysitter, a male babysitter that I had had come over while I went grocery shopping, because I had 4 kids and the 2 older ones were outside playing. So I invited this kid from the, that came in over. Sometimes his mom and I ran together. And so I said, you want to come over and play with the boys and then I'm going to go grocery shopping. I'll be back and it'll be easier for them. Well, it turns out that he experimented with them, both my sons, and they told me, 15, 16 years after the fact. Well, having my own experience of that, it was the very worst thing I could hear from my children. You know, it was just this shock of shame and guilt and what if, why was I so lazy that I didn't just take them all to the store with me, you know, and all of that. And it just, oh my gosh, just shattered everything inside of me about protecting my kids from the very worst thing I could even imagine for them. And I, within 4 months, had a tumor over my heart and my left breast. So when it was found and I was diagnosed, I said, you know, I know exactly why I have that. And I knew what had to happen. And so I went home directly from having my biopsy and called, I found this now man and called him up, located him. And he said, when I called him, he said, I've been expecting this call for the last 15 years, you know, so I knew that he too was also suffering, you know, he was only 12 years old when he did this. And so, yeah, so we had this, you know, I said, the first thing I need to know is why. And, you know, for a lot of sexual abuse like that, it's not about sex, it's about power. Like in my case with this vice principal, it really wasn't about sex. It's never about that. It's misuse of power and something else going on for them. But for this, it was like sexual curiosity. So I said, okay. So I connected him to my sons and we had this amazing forgiveness process. I was able to facilitate this. And then I made him responsible for paying for therapy for them so that he had some skin in the game. And it just made this, it was the most amazing. I mean, I can't even describe it, Veronica. My kids responded to therapy instantly. He was freed from this probably cancer of his own, you know, of guilt and shame. I was able to do a lot of really deep work and energetic way and also therapy in that month. That tumor was gone in 1 month. 1 month. So I'm really, you know, clear, very clear that whatever happens in my body is a result of what's going on with agreements in my cells and in my mind. And, you know, it's part of I know I'm here to learn how to forgive. And that's really clear, you know? So I think that when we get too hung up on illness being something that you can't overcome or that it's something that should be overcome, you know, sometimes illness is the teacher. So anyway, that's kind of a long-winded answer to that, but I
got to say, I appreciate you being so open and honest and sharing about something that's so difficult to share about, but a lot of people have been through it.
Yes, they have.
You know, the truth shall set you free. I tell
That's
people
right.
the truth shall set you free. And also truth heals. And so not only your healing, but your son's healing and this other person who we would call the perpetrator and we might want to throw in the basement and never talk about and punish. Right. You actually brought him into the folds and said, you need healing too. You need healing too. And so I really appreciate that you shared that because I know when people see this is going to help so many people. Now, the mystic medicine, we're talking about mystic medicine right here. We're talking about the spiritual side. Shift us into this mystic medicine. I talk about myself as a medical intuitive. You talk about, you're a mystic medicine woman. Talk about that a little bit.
I also am a medical intuitive, and the reason I use the word mystic is because I want to bring people back into the idea that everything is of God. Everything. I don't care what your language is. If you don't believe in God, if you don't believe or talk about God, I don't care about religion. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that creative inner spark that you have inside your heart that connects you to source, that you are part of creation. You know, I mean, we are part and parcel co-creators of our lives, of everything that happens around us. That makes you automatically sacred. You know, everything is sacred. Rheumatoid arthritis is of God. Breast cancer is of God. Sexual abuse is of God. And that's the thing that mystic medicine is for me, is that everything is God. And that's going to be hard for a lot of people to hear because people want to categorize things as evil or sacred. And what I learned through this process is that everything is God. that God's not punishing you with something, you know, it's not, disease is not a punishment from God, you know, that we are not impure vessels. We're not sinners. Everything is of God. And that's what mysticism is the recognition that everybody and everything is part of God. So to me, mystic medicine is bringing that back in. It's recognizing that how you tell your story is really the most important thing that you can do. Are you a victim or are you powerful? And mystic medicine is all about healing that and recognition that you are powerful. You never weren't powerful. And as a child, when you were powerless, right? Because we are powerless as children, that you're going to grow to an adult and you can change that story and you can become powerful and reclaim it. And one of the things that in my meditations that has come to me is that there's this grid of light that kind of holds the universe together. And I've seen this in art. Alex Gray has painted the things that I've seen in meditation, you know? And so I know this is the experience of so many other people where we're all beings of light, that there's this grid of light that's all around us. And one of the things that one day I saw was that if we aren't lit up, that we're actually weakening the fiber that holds all of our species together. That this is, you know, the thing that's the most important is that we all show up lit up to our highest potential. And that is being a mystic, right? It's saying that everything and everybody is sacred, and it's important that we have each other's backs and that we light ourselves up and we don't hide ourselves because we're afraid of being seen as powerful. That we're all powerful beings. We all have our unique talents and gifts.
Yes, and saying everybody's sacred, even the perpetrator is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
But now, what I love about you is that you don't just go with the woo-woo, you also help people heal with concrete ways. And so I want to segue in and finish this because you have the Women's Vitality Summit coming up, which I'm going to be on with you.
Yes, you are.
Very much. I'm looking very forward to that. And so tell us about the Women's Vitality Summit, because this is not just woo-woo. I know you go off and take people to Africa to have these experiences. And what's interesting about Africa, because my husband's from West Africa and I've been there, and Africa for me doesn't energetically fit at this point in that part of Africa.
Well, Africa's huge.
Yes, Africa's huge. 54 countries. And just the part I've been is this dark vortex. And I'm like, I never want to go back there again because I'm so sensitive. Never want to go back to that place again. But
come with me.
I may come with you one day. Yeah,
I'll take you to a part of Africa that you will fall in love with.
Yes, I am looking forward to that. But Women's Vitality Summit is a way to help people come into their own as women. Tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the things that I'm sure you see and that I have seen over 30 years of being in medicine is that in this era, women feel like they have to bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and look hot at the same time, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Overscheduled, overstressed, and really kind of overburdened with the weight of everything that they have taken on for themselves. I mean, this is all self-induced, right? So I don't believe anybody expects all that of us. It's just us that expects all that of all of us. And so one of the things that I realized as I was seeing clients in my office, you know, my patients would come in as if they'd been hit by Mack trucks after the holidays or after, you know, just anything. I can't lose weight, Dr. Keesha. You gave bioidentical hormones to my neighbor and she feels fantastic. I want some of that. And I start asking questions. Well, you know, why do you think you need hormones? Well, my libido's completely gone and I can't lose weight and I'm just a raving maniac and I can't sleep and I can't remember anything. And so when I start asking simple questions like, well, tell me about what a normal day looks like for you, you know, hormones aren't going to help this, you know? And so I started saying, okay, when we start really looking at root cause, we've got to get down to self-care. And so the Women's Vitality Summit's tagline is caring for yourself, body and soul. And the guests that I have come on range from functional medicine, as in physical, to, you know, medical medium like you, to, or medical intuitive, and to people that are psychotherapists and people who work on all different layers, you know, Ayurvedic medicine, because I know that women tend to now focus on the way that we do as a cultural story, the magic pill theory. People want a really fast fix. And so, have you got a supplement that I can take for that if you're in functional medicine, you know? And I just like it's the same thing as, you know, it's green allopathy, right? So it's like, no, there's no magic supplement either. I don't care what the thing says out there, you know? So, or the superfood, you know, they want to say, well, if I eat a bunch of kale, then I'm going to be okay. I can still have my Red Bull and, you know, power through. So the Women's Vitality Summit came as an outgrowth of this. I look at, you know, your libido level as the way Ayurvedic looks at it, which is ojas, which is your life force. And it's like a, you know, the little indicator light on the dashboard of your car. If your gas tank is empty, you know, if you drive, that if you press down on that gas pedal harder and expect to go further and faster and longer, you're going to break down on the side of the road and not go anywhere. And our bodies are the same. We have these little feedback gauges, you know, and libido is one, your weight is another, your blood pressure is one, your eyesight is one, your hair is one. And we tend to be so disconnected from ourselves that we're not paying attention to the really loud feedback our bodies are giving to us to tell us how we're doing. And so the Women's Vitality Summit came as my mission to start getting women in touch with themselves, to really understand that if they're caring for everyone else and not themselves, that there's not going to be anything left over and you're not doing anyone any good, that there's this well that's in your heart center. And if you're trying to dip into it to feed other people and it's empty, then you got nothing, right? And it's the same as breaking down on the side of the road. And instead of refueling, we're grabbing Red Bulls and coffees and Snickers bars and in bananas, you know, and trying to get us through, right? So I'm just kind of like, stop the madness. And you've got this one lifetime. You've got this beautiful body that you live in. Stop hating it. Start getting into a collaborative team with it and working on your purpose, and quit worrying about what the scale says or what the wrinkle that's appearing on your face is meaning about you and whatever, you know. It's like, get on with it, live your sacred life and be strong and powerful and shine. And so that's the Women's Vitality Summit, is a lot of really amazing concrete tips about how to do that.
So tell us, you got to share with us now where we can find out more about the Women's Vitality Summit.
So drkeesha.com, it's DRKEESHA.com. And the Women's Vitality Summit from September of 2016 is there. And there's a bundle that you can buy for a very nominal price, which is over 50 speakers. And now we have I'm calling it the expansion pack coming out in April, which is another summit. And one of the things I'm calling for, and Dr. Veronica, I appreciate actually being able to come on here. This is the first live thing that I've made this call. If anything I've said to your listeners is resonating and you would like to be a leader and form a women's group or a women's circle, I'm actually creating those around the world to watch the Women's Vitality Summit. So your listeners can get together kind of like in a book club format in their living rooms and watch you and talk about, you know, I'm going to send out a little workbook and a little curriculum, then you can have some questions and you can really dive deep and explore this. Not just listen to it while you're dropping off your kid at soccer or while you're on the treadmill, but really say, what are my actionable steps I can take next to step into the person that I know I'm capable of being and I haven't felt like I had the energy to do it. So they can email me, info@drkeesha.com, DRKEESHA.com.
Well, wonderful. I can tell you're also a host because you spell everything, because I usually spell things for people. I say, I want you to know how to find this, so I'm going to spell it for you. You did it all for me. So Dr. Keesha, drkeesha.com, I thank you so much. This is the founder of the Women's Vitality Summit, and you're going to see me on the Women's Vitality Summit. I'm so excited to have been asked. I feel blessed and honored to have been asked, because so I can share the woo-woo side of me, that medicine side. It's there. I use it every single day, but the woo-woo side, it's there too, and that's how I really get amazing results for people. So Dr. Keesha, soul sister, thank you so much for being on Dr. Veronica's Wellness.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more on how to bring wellness into your life, visit drveronica.com. See you all next week. Take care.